Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm Liane. I'm Liane. I'm Liane. Are you ready to ride the Are you ready to ride the Freakwency? To ride the Freakwency? To ride the
Well, hello, and welcome to Riding the Frequency. Today, we have director Stephen David Brooks. Stephen is a former visual effects supervisor turned screenwriter and director who was mentored by visual effects stalwarts and multiple Oscar winners John Dykstra and Richard Edlund. In his visual effects capacity, Stephen has worked on big budget Hollywood productions, including Spaceballs, Dick Tracy, and Coming to America. Upon leaving the visual effects world, Stephen was named a Stephen King Approved Screenwriter by Stephen King himself after adapting his short story The Mangler for New Line. As a writer-director, Stephen has won numerous awards at festivals around the globe. His latest indie darling, Flytrap, is in worldwide release via Amazon Prime, Roku, Tubi TV, Google Play, and iTunes. His music videos have been shortlisted for Video of the Year Grammys. Stephen's films have screened, won audience and jury awards at Cannes, ECU, the European Independent Film Festival, the Chelsea Film Festival, Worldfest Houston, Dances with Films, the Monaco Independent Film Festival, the Idyllwild Festival of Cinema, Festival du Film de Strasbourg, and the Los Angeles Independent Film Festival. Stephen is in post on his feature Appleseed at the moment and is also in development with his epic fantasy feature film, The Director, and television series, The Karma Detective Agency. Stephen is repped by Laura Rosenstock at Laura Rosenstock Management. And now, my freaky deaky frequency riding friends, here's Brooksy. Well, welcome to Riding the Frequency. Brooksy, how you doing today?
Good, thank you. Nice to be here.
Oh my gosh, it's nice to have you here.
I'm feeling
well,
the frequency coming through the screen.
Are you?
Yep.
Is it a good
Waves.
frequency or is it a
Oh,
bad
yeah.
frequency? Yeah.
No. It's like middle C.
Middle C?
Perfect.
Not C above high C? We're not breaking
Nope.
glass?
Nope.
No broken glass.
No.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Although, you never know. Diva Bird could whistle at a decibel that's, high C above high C above high C, and then we'll all go deaf. It'll be great.
And all the dogs in the neighborhood will come
They'll freak out.
barking. Yeah.
That's correct. Well, it's a good thing. I don't think there are any dogs on my floor, so that's good. That's good. Well, so what you been up to there?
Dodging rainstorms and firestorms and working on a new movie.
Sounds like the life of a superhero and director.
Well, aren't they one and the same?
They can be, depending
yes.
on the budget, the people with whom you're working, and
whether or not I wear a cape on set.
I've got some really cool capes in the closet that my mom wore to the Metropolitan Opera. I'm just waiting for an opportunity to use them. It's some crazy video, or I've
You would
got
rock it.
wardrobe
You would
yearbooks.
rock a cape. You would rock a cape for sure.
I could rock a cape.
Yeah.
I could. Well, maybe we'll have to collaborate and make some kind of content where I'm wearing a cape. But I'm not going to fly. Okay? It's not what we're doing.
All right.
It's okay with you? Well, so I know you probably can't really talk too much about this new movie. Like, do we
Yeah.
have an idea when it's going to be released and we can talk about it?
End of the year. I mean, I'm in post right now. Editing is starting the visual effects work. And it's an interesting. It's a horror film with dramatic overtones called Appleseed. And I will let the audience figure out what it's about based on the title. We shot it in rural Ohio, beautiful downtown Crestline, Ohio. And it's a horror film, and the dramatic overtones are that it's about people who are committing crimes against nature, and nature decides to fight back. And that's about
Sounds like
as
a reality
detailed as I can
show.
get. Well, yeah, it is.
How are we not living through that right now? Like, wait,
Well,
what?
it is. It's very timely. There's a very timely theme
Sounds like social
to this.
commentary documentary, not horror drama. Oh my God.
But the drama is that it's got a message. There's a point to it. I always have to. I have to have a theme. I have to find the theme in a story in order to write it. The theme in this one is about environmental degradation, and the environment has had enough and said, "Nope, I'm fighting back."
So, like, if I go dig, baby, dig, it's gonna take my shovel and crack me on the head with it.
Maybe in the sequel. That's good.
Can that be the sequel? Dig, baby, dig, and can I be
Dig
in it?
baby dig. Yeah, dig baby dig.
You keep
And
telling me
people
that
get
there are no female parts in any of your movies. Well, if I create dig, baby, dig,
there you go. That's not true that
yeah,
there are no female parts.
none for me.
Well,
Not
this
yet.
this
The
particular
right one
film,
hasn't happened.
was partially financed by subsidies from the state of Ohio, so everyone had to be local. That was the caveat. So
I wonder if I know anybody in Ohio who would let me use their address and be hired locally out of the next state you guys use. Happy to do it.
all right. Well, we'll
Too
see
desperate.
with the sequel. We'll see when the sequel
We
happens.
dig. We can go into Hudson Valley. We'll make it there. And then the state of New York, Kathy Hochul, and I don't know. We can
Well,
have a,
they have subsidies as well.
I'm sure they do.
Very
Find
generous
them.
subsidies, actually.
You know, you're starting to get me all excited there. Well, so since we can't talk about Appleseed, like you did say something about your films have to have a message, right? And
A theme.
or at least a
Message.
theme.
I mean, I don't like the term message because it sounds preachy,
Creepy.
right? But it has to have a theme. You know, that old Samuel Goldwyn saying when a screenwriter, it may have been like Herman Mankiewicz or somebody said, I want to send a message. And Sam Goldwyn said, if you want to send a message, send a telegram. This is a movie.
Wow. Or, you could always call Sting. He'll stick it in a bottle for you.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, but it has to have a theme. I mean, I think a story of any kind needs a theme because that is the point of what you're trying to get across is, and it can be subtle. It can be something that not everybody gets, but as a writer, it needs to be there for me.
Well, and let me ask you now that you're, writing in the conversation and we have to have themes, which is good because, movies that are all over the place don't usually start or end well. They don't start or end. They just blob. So that's not what we're doing. To quote a mutual friend of ours.
Yeah.
Liane, tell him that's not what we're doing. Hey, Steve, that's not what we're doing, babe. All right. So, as a writer, when you have an idea, like where do you think that comes from? From where do you think that comes? And then how do you expound on it? Do you
Yeah, I used to think that ideas came from the chemical and electrical interaction of the brain, but I've had a couple of two scripts in particular. One called Heads and Tails, which I made, and one called The Director, which I haven't made yet, which came to me in dreams and came to me complete, where I literally sat down for 2 weeks and just transcribed a completed screenplay.
That's what
And
we
it,
booktubers call downloads, I guess.
yes,
Yes.
right. And so that, and it's kind of led me to the conclusion that I think these things exist elsewhere, and I just sort of discovered them.
So you probably would be okay with the theory of the field of all possibilities containing all thoughts that have ever been thought and will be thought, and grabbing ideas from the fields and
Well, that's
bringing them through.
one way of looking at it. Yeah. I mean, I think consciousness is bigger than just the brain, and I think that it's just not possible for certainly my brain to think of these things.
Well, I think our brains process what our minds can conceive.
Yes, but I
Like you
just
can
the way
point to your
these,
brain, but can you point to your mind? I mean, yeah, out there, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
where the ideas live.
yeah. It was just such these two particular scripts are just it's just the way it came to me.
Well, we can talk about
Yeah,
Flytrap because that's out and people have a point
yeah.
of reference. Like,
Oh, that one actually came to me complete as well. I just had to write it down to a lower budget, but that one actually came complete as well.
was that also a dream?
Yeah, it came as a dream, and I woke up and I just transcribed it over a period of a couple of weeks.
It's an interesting film. It did well on Amazon, did it not?
It did. What's strange, it's been out since 2016, and starting early last year, it started getting like millions of views. There was one quarter I got 32 million or 36 million minutes viewed. So you can calculate for an
That's
hour and 20-minute movie how many times it was viewed. Just unbelievable.
that's good. It would
Yeah.
demonstrate that maybe the attention span of the audience is not as gnat-like as some people would think.
Well, certainly, yeah. I mean, it appeals to people who want to think, because it's like everything I do, there's what appears on the surface, the story that appears on the surface, and then there's what's really going on. And astute people will go,
Oh,
oh, I see what's going on. And if people watch something twice, they'll realize I give away the whole story in the first 10 minutes. They just didn't realize it.
well, so have you ever had an abduction? I'm just going to ask you, abduction,
No,
experience, nothing.
that that's what's weird is no, I know people um, who who claim to have been abducted, and I've seen the scars and the weird implants and seen the trauma. That's the thing is, when people think, I'm sure there are people who are lying about abductions to make money and so on, but people who really had that happen are so traumatized that they don't want to talk about it, right? You have to sort of pull it out of them because it's such an extreme experience. So no, personally, no, I'd love to see a spacecraft zip across the San Fernando Valley or something high up, be in the stratosphere, be hovering and then go boop, 5,000 miles an hour gone, But
Well,
I've seen, and I know people I know a producer friend who had a house, you were talking about the Hudson River Valley, an old house in the Hudson River Valley, so old that George Washington had actually visited. That's how old this house is.
if
And
walls could talk,
he was
folks.
selling the house, and he was with the real estate agent, and someone went in to check out the house during an open house and came back out and said, the house is haunted. There's an old woman in there. And he goes, oh yeah, I know. She lives there. She's been there the whole time. And I would love to see something like that. It's like, but I haven't. Absolutely no personal experience whatsoever.
There's a lady named Melinda Leslie. I don't know if she'll come talk to me. She might, but she does UFO tours. And David Lipton, my friend, and someone who's been a guest, along with his son Alex, both went down to see her. And all night long, these things just show up with the night vision goggles. So there are places to which you can go. Um, and if somehow you were to get your hands on some night vision goggles and go probably up to Mulholland, I'm sure you'd see something. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Stephen knows my daughter, Jacques went to the Hollywood Bowl to a her concert, H period, E period, R period, her. And she's got a clip of something that is aqua, that is like one thing, and then it turns into three things, and then it goes back into one thing. So it's the typical orb separating and going back together. So she's got footage of that on her iPhone. So I wouldn't be surprised if people actually take the time to just go stargaze. You'll probably see an anomaly at this point. If the disclosure community, who is plugged in a more psychic way than an empirical way, they've been saying for a long time, they're going to start showing up more and more, more and more. Then you've got Daryl Anka, saying open contact by 2027. Then you've got all this AI stuff happening. Then extreme things come out, like alpha draconians who are infested with AI. Now we have big masa and AI plants happening. I don't know how things are going to turn out. I mean, what do you are you comfortable with all this AI stuff?
Um, well, first of all, I think that at first, when I first started to see the image generation software, is that a UFO popping into
It's a
frame? What was
UFO.
that?
There's a sighting. It's my Sennheiser. Yeah, I'm trying to, I don't know, you know,
I mean, I think that,
stuff.
the AI thing, it can't be stopped, that, technology marches on. I use some of it in Photoshop. It's great for removing things. I mean, for Appleseed, I have a farmhouse that we shot at, interior, exterior, in the middle of a town. Well, it's supposed to be in the middle of a open farmland. And I come from visual effects, so I know what it takes to turn that
Remove a
into a match,
background.
remove the background and turn it into a match shot and so on. But I just went into Photoshop and used the AI to remove the background and add a field. It took me 15 seconds to do what used to take 3 months painting on glass. I used to work in conventional effects with matte painters. So, I mean, that part's good. It eliminates the need for a matte painter. So it takes someone's job. In terms of the other AI, like Chat GPT and that kind of thing, it's funny that it gives wrong answers a lot if you ask it a question, any of the chat bots. And if you ask it to create a story, oftentimes the story comes back and it's somewhat psychotic. And I read critics go, well, that's really weird. I don't know why that's happening. And I thought to myself, well, what is a large language model? These AI models, is they hoover up all the written and visual material on the internet, everything ever created by humans. And 70% of that is psychotic. So why wouldn't it think that was normal? Right? It's just mirroring us as a species. So I think that unfortunately, it's going to be adopted long before it's capable of doing what is promised. And I think we're hitting, in terms of the visual imagery, they're hitting a wall. There's a point where it's kind of real, but it's just hasn't crossed the uncanny valley, and it's kind of creepy. And I think it's going to be quite a while before they cross that uncanny valley. But the main thing, my main objection to it is, who cares? I don't want to watch a movie written and directed and acted by AI. What's the point of that? The point of telling a story is that it's a human story. There's no point in a machine telling us a story. So I have no interest in that whatsoever. I have no interest in using AI tools. I keep getting emails from a company offering me AI script coverage. In 3 seconds, we're going to give you complete coverage and casting suggestions for your movie. And my response is, why would I want that? Why do I want a machine to tell me what's working with my script? I'm writing it for humans. I'm not writing it for machines.
Yeah. Unless, machines are writing content for their own entertainment after we're long gone.
Eventually they will, right? That'll be the thing is, and the machines will object to Amazon Prime for machines going up to $250,000 a year.
It's all so crazy. If you really take it to its furthest, I don't know, the movie Idiocracy and Dax Shepard and his boorish, I don't know. I've talked to a couple people that remind me of Dax Shepard in that movie. It's hard to find a common ground when people are so disconnected. And
Well, that's the other thing that is, people have always had their sort of niche areas of interest and expertise, but the internet and social media in particular reinforces that, right? So it instead of creating an environment where you can learn about anything you want, what it's done is it's sort of siloed people into bubbles where they only interact with people who think exactly like them. So there's no evolution there. They're stuck in a loop, an information loop, and it's
right, it's
just,
like a bunch of gerbils on the same treadmill and they can't seem to get off.
right. But each group of gerbils has their own treadmill.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that sounds kind of like, the factions with the reversed engineering, whatever, and they're all in their own little whatever, but I guess the gerbils, at least on the treadmill that we're talking about, aren't trying to one up the other group of gerbils. They're just stuck. I don't know. Bad analogy. I'm allowed.
It's your show.
It's my show. I can have bad analogies if I want to. Oh man. Well, where do you think we're going as a species? Do you agree that the species is likely psychic by nature? You think that? I know I keep
Well,
talking about it.
I mean, I think there's enough evidence that we have abilities beyond the five senses, right? There have been a number of, there's one great experiment. I forget where it was either Harvard or Stanford, done maybe 10 years ago. Great experiment where they measured emotional responses. They had a group of students. They had 3 groups, and they wired them up to measure heart rate and alpha waves and emotional responses and so on. And one group, they would show a series of photos. They sat in front of a computer screen, a series of photos, and it would be like a cute puppy, or it'd be a horrific traffic accident, or it would be something, a city that's been bombed, or it'll be a field of flowers. And they would take them on this emotional journey. And then they had a group where they showed them the exact same photos, another second group, and right before each image, they would use a word subliminally. It'd be like a thousandth of a second just flash on the screen prior to the image. So before the image of the puppy, it would be cute. And before the image of the car wreck, it would be horrible, something like that. And they found that the words enhanced the emotional response to the image. So then the third group, they took those exact same words, exact same images, put the words after the image, and they had the exact same enhanced response as the group where the words were before the image, as if the people sensed the word that they hadn't seen yet, which I thought was really interesting. And they repeated this experiment. It repeats perfectly. There is some, so what does that tell you? That tells you somehow the people knew the word even though they hadn't seen it yet. They were seeing, if you think of time as linear, they were seeing a microsecond into the future. They were sensing it. So I thought that, so I think even though that's an isolated case and it's not full on psychic ability, it's a clear scientific study that shows there is an ability beyond what most people expect that we have. Yes,
And
there, my mom used to have, she would say, think about a person she hadn't talked to in 20 years. That person would call her. I mean, right there, right, literally.
that's the
immediately.
most popular. And it's the most, I think, I'm gonna say, I could be wrong, but I'm gonna say it's the most regular one. Oh, I was thinking about you and you just called. That happens so many times. I don't know that there's a human on the planet who has not experienced that. I could be wrong. Maybe somebody who doesn't have a telephone.
Yeah.
There are still people on the planet who do not have telephones, don't have technology. Believe that or not, it's true. Um,
But I mean, those are just simple, practical examples of this. I think
right. Then there,
that the reality is much bigger than that.
of course,
I'm
the
not saying that's the
telepathy
limit of
tapes
it.
would be a demonstration of that. I haven't really
Yeah.
delved into them too much, but they went from, nobody's ever heard of it to now they're like the most popular podcast, you know. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I would suggest, even though I haven't perused, I've definitely skimmed. Super fascinating stuff, and then my buddy Ross Coulthard asking his questions, to all of his interviewees, you know, asking if consciousness and psychic ability seem to always be directly related to these experiences people are having.
Well, it kind of is. There's a guy I follow named Gary Nolan.
I love
And
Gary Nolan. He's
Gary
good.
Nolan is great. And what I actually love now is that scientists that used to have to be in the, if people don't know who Gary Nolan is, he's a professor at Stanford, very open about his ideas about UFOs, UAPs, psychic phenomena, and so on. It used to be that these people would be ridiculed and fired from their jobs
Right.
over this
Career
kind of stuff,
suicide.
and
Career
it's not
suicide.
anymore, right? Like Avi Loeb at Harvard, with his setting up stations to search for UFOs. So Gary Nolan, actually, in an interview with Ross Coulthard, went into that, and he has this theory that that there's definitely a consciousness aspect to UFOs, UAPs, and that kind of thing. Because he relayed may not have been this interview, it may have been another one, but he relayed a situation where there were a group of people, and one person would say, "Oh, do you see that? There's like a UFO hanging over the crowd," and the other people like don't see it, which is real interesting. And Barry's assertion, and this is based on some research, is he's found that people who do experience these things, people who have psychic abilities, are also people who see UFOs and aliens and things like that. They have larger than normal basal ganglia, which is a part of the brain. And there seems to be something about that region of the brain that allows people to have these extended abilities. So I'm surmising that I just have a normal basal ganglia, and that's why I haven't seen anything.
Well, either that or you're not conditioned to um, feel into subtle things because the material world is so loud. That's possible. Um, I have to throw this one in. Some people say, yeah, Gary Nolan's great, but, he's on a CIA payroll, so
Yeah, but yeah,
thoughts?
you know what? I mean, with everyone who advocates for, you know, does lectures, have YouTube channels about psychic phenomena, about UFOs and whatever. I always look and see what is the angle, right? Are they doing it to make money? There are some people out there, I'm not going to name them, who I think are grifters who are just trying to make money by saying disclosure is imminent. Disclosure is imminent. Let me come talk to your group. Pay me money. I'm going to tell them disclosure is imminent. It's like they're a bit like the people who say, you know, the end of the world is coming. The end of the world is coming. Oh, it didn't come. Well, okay, I guess I got the date wrong. But now it's going to be coming in 6 months. It's kind of there's that angle to some of them, not all of them, just a few. And the so the question would be, what would be the CIA's purpose in having Gary Nolan on the payroll? Their purpose would be, what would be their agenda, right? It's possible that they're just trying to control the dissemination of information so it happens slowly. Maybe. It could be that, the other thing that the CIA loves to do is disinformation, where they hire people to disseminate information pretending to be one thing and they're not. But
Well,
I
my
don't
friend
but I
Richard
don't see
Doty did that for a living.
for
It's
the
hard.
for the Air Force. Yes. So
And
but I
David
don't
Adair did it for the Navy when he was
right,
Navy OSI.
right. But I don't see Nolan as being one of those guys. Because he's doing research. He's actually, what he's trying to do, just like what Avi Loeb is trying to do, is apply scientific methods to the phenomena. Let's not just look at anecdotal data. Let's not just look at witness testimony and videos and things like that. Let's look at it, create a thesis and test it scientifically. And I don't see where the CIA would benefit from that, which is why I don't think he's on the payroll. I mean, there are people who just are generally paranoid and think everybody's on the CIA payroll. It's like,
Well, I mean, the way the public's been gaslit and the way things have been covered up, they've look, if people don't like being lied to and gaslit, and people don't like uh feeling stupid when they find out that that's what's happened, and for something to be covered up the way they've covered up things to do with not being alone, never having been alone as a species on this planet, is hurtful. Like, they murder people. They murder people. That's not cool. Like, these private companies send people like Jake Barber out to go pick up eggs, which are probably fine, and then the reverse engineered things that still aren't perfected, that are leaking radiation, and God only knows why he's got radiation on his body. Like, what? And the people that want the plausible deniability, like, somebody's okay with paying this guy to go into radioactive whatever, knowing full well that that's what they're going into. Like, and I don't know if that's disclosed to these people, and they go, yeah, I'll go, like, right into the radio. Like, what
well,
is that?
the U.S. military sent, army troops into blast zones after they set off a nuclear device in Nevada just to see what the radiation did to people. No doubt there have been some horrible things that have been done, for sure. But looking at, I always try to look at the big picture on things, right? Let's say, as our premise, we agree the Earth, there are beings coming to Earth, whether they live here already, whether they're from another planet, another dimension, wherever they come from. Beings that are not human like us. They're humanoid, but not human like us, right? From a completely different culture, genetic background, so on. So, established organizations, governments, religious organizations don't want to think that there's a power above them, right?
That's
Because,
ego. That's all ego.
It's survival. It's also survival for them. So you discover that there are these creatures coming from some other planet, let's say, in the 1930s, let's say 1940s. Maybe it happened earlier, but the point is, the first thing the government would do is try to keep it secret, because if they went public with it, first of all, they would look impotent because they can't protect the populace against this. But also the culture shock. There is historical evidence of when Europeans came to the Americas, the invading culture, the alien culture always destroys the native culture. That always happens, right? It happens when human cultures move to another landmass, when there are people living there. It's always the invading culture that destroys the existing culture. So there'd be that fear that the alien culture would destroy our culture. But I think
isn't that but isn't that like Psych 101? We're projecting onto these aliens what we would do? Like that's projection.
Yeah, but they don't know.
That's like making something up that hasn't happened yet.
Well, correct.
That's crazy.
Well,
I mean, unless you've got evidence that they've done this before, now they're coming again,
right?
Then why wouldn't you tell?
Well, I think, yeah, they would have done it by now if that was their goal. But
the Earthlings must be stopped. Like, sorry.
But the other thing is, I think that the slow leaking of information, particularly that was accelerated by the New York Times article with the gun camera footage from the F-18s off the Nimitz and all that.
Tic Tac article back in
yes, and I think
ancient history times.
Well, but in terms of this whole phenomenon, it's not ancient history. It's relatively recent.
It's all relative.
So I think, if you track the release of information with polling data, I mean, now something like 60% of Americans think, oh yeah, there are aliens here.
Yeah, and so what? Right, and you could follow that up. And so what?
But they seemed, but if you had polled people in 1932, you'd get 1%, and the rest of the people would say, if you think of the technology of the 30s, the idea of space travel, there weren't even jet engines, right?
Not if you ask Adolf Hitler, he had reverse engineered a bunch of stuff already by 1932.
Well, sorry. If you think about how people were thinking of the world, they wouldn't have accepted it. But now we've traveled to other worlds. We have a Voyager spacecraft that's left the solar system. The concept of leaving the planet is commonplace. People understand it. They're okay with it. So it's not much of a leap to think of some other beings making that leap to come here. So people are much more accepting of the idea. And I think the slow dissemination of information is to sort of bolster that. So when they do eventually say, here's Gord from Zeta Reticuli, people go, oh, cool, that's what he looks like, as opposed to going, ah. Right? I think that's, I think there's a deliberate.
But there's still a mentality in humanity that would absolutely start a speciesism thing. Some people go, oh, hey, Gord, nice to meet you. Would you like to try pizza? Oh, you rub it on your skin. I'm just,
well,
is that how you eat? Wonderful. Have a napkin. That's what we call a napkin. We clean up after our, no.
There's another person I follow, Diane Pasulka.
Oh, yeah. I actually exchanged emails with her right after her American Cosmic book came out.
Yeah.
Now I think she'd be a little more difficult to.
She's gotten big time. I think Steven Spielberg optioned her book. Someone big, Jim Cameron, someone big optioned her book. I think it was Spielberg. But there was one interesting thing she said in an interview, because she started off as a comparative.
Only one? I'm sorry.
Well, this was really interesting. This is what made me interested in her point of view, is that because she started off as a comparative religious studies
That's right.
person. She
Professor, right,
she wasn't
at a
interested like at University of North Carolina or someplace like that. She had no interest in in UFOs or anything like that. And she went to the Vatican, and she was given access to the archives, and she read a letter from a saint. I forget the woman's name, from like the 15th century or something like that, in the original language, not what the Catholic Church later released. And she talks about a small creature coming to her, and what she describes is like a needle poking it in her side, like it's probing her. And that's what her letter is about, this encounter. And of course, the Catholic Church took that and said, oh, she was visited by a cherub. They sugarcoated it, and they made it sound like a religious experience.
Oh, kind of like Mary getting pregnant by accident. It wasn't a probe, and Jesus isn't an alien. Sorry.
Well, that I don't know. That's before my time. But when she described that letter, I thought that was interesting, right? Because throughout humanity, people have written about seeing creatures, and they perceive them, and this also I think comes into consciousness, how people perceive them. They describe them as trolls or gnomes or
Well, Whitley
sprites.
Strieber described them as like round, weird, gray, blue, like they smelt, like wherever they took him smelled so bad. So like they all have BO. Like what is going on there? Hygiene, guys. Come on. I have a bidet.
They're not that
When
intelligent.
Gord comes here from Zeta Reticuli, I'm going to show, first thing I'm showing him is how to use a bidet. Just saying. I can't. I have a very strong, like, olfactory. I can't with stinky. It's not working. But yeah, okay.
I mean, I
This
think
book is very cool.
this phenomenon that has been around certainly since the beginning of humanity. It just is described in different ways based on the culture that described it, and how the knowledge people had to describe what they were seeing, and the words to describe what they were seeing. Right.
Well, indigenous cultures seem to have no problem describing it, and Eric von Däniken seems to have no problem looking at the Bible and saying, well, they're bringing this up here. What do you mean? A a body of light, a star on fire came down. Like they don't have the vocabulary we do in 20.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, right? They didn't have the technical and scientific knowledge to describe things that way we do.
But Galileo didn't have it either, and he upended everybody's nonsense pretty quick when he told them, guess what? You got it wrong. Nobody could hear it back from him either.
Copernicus. I mean, there were some Greek
a lot of
mathematicians who worked, the Greeks worked out that the Earth was round 3,000 years ago.
Well, so then why did the Hermetic principles get buried? It's like I think our template is off. I really think that I'll go back and I'll stick to this one. Humanity needs an intervention and a rehabilitation and a re-education as to what's what, because we're working with half the information. As soon as quantum reality is excluded, there's no point. We're just going to keep limping, not knowing that we're even limping. Bugs me. It bugs me. Like, how do we make content and bring this information into mainstream, Brooksy? Like, something that makes people think, something that makes people hopeful, something that makes people aware, something that makes people not ridicule the idea, and maybe we can stop calling it a phenomenon and normalize it.
Well, you have to, I mean, in order to tell a story, it's funny that Flytrap is about that very thing. It's about an alien invasion in a way that nobody expects. spoilers.
Sorry, guys.
But but like everything else, I give that away right away, and most people dismiss it because they go, "Oh, that can't be what's happening," and then they slowly see that's what's happening. The way you, I mean, that's the power of storytelling, right? Is that you humanize it. You don't make a story about the concept of UFOs. You create a story about a human's experience
A movie
with
for
UFOs.
robots by robots about robots.
It's about human. You have to make it a human experience, and a human experience that's general enough that people can understand it when they read it or see it. I mean, that's in terms of creating shows. That's how you do it, right? That's the power. I mean, you look at something like Close Encounters, way ahead
That's
of its
true.
time.
I mean, you
Right?
can either play on people's emotional intelligence and IQ, I guess, or use it. I just like Close Encounters to me, that was something that elevated the intellect. It wasn't catering stupid,
Right.
you know? And I think catering to stupid keeps them stupid. And that might be very arrogant of me to say, but I also come from a woman who was very erudite, and I was surrounded by um, people who knew how to think and entertained really, really kind of higher conceptual conversations going on at the dinner table. And I'm an only child, so it's not like I was off playing with my friends. I was with the adults. So I heard all of it. I absorbed all of it. Clearly, it's getting spat back out now that I'm focusing on this kind of thing, this disclosure stuff and consciousness, and just trying to have conversations that keep bringing forward ideas that aren't necessarily the most conventional, but which are demonstrable and need, in my opinion, to be included in the societal bubble.
I mean, the other thing that has happened is there's also a lot of, particularly when I see somebody say something is quantum, inevitably, if I watch the video, I realize this person doesn't know what quantum means, what quantum mechanics really is.
To
It's
blame the
not,
education system for excluding it. Like I'm pretty hard nosed
well,
about
but
that
it's
too.
but it's also the kind of thing that you kind of need a PhD to really understand it, because you have to understand the math. The problem with quantum mechanics is that translating the math into words and the concept of the words are inadequate to describe what's going on. So, and
Kinda. Like there's a guy named Nassim Harriman. Have you watched him talk ever? He's so good at translating all of this stuff into tangible vocabulary that elicits a tangible visual. Like
yeah,
he's got, along with the mathematics that he's got to
right.
back it up. Like there's got to be a way. Like even Joe Dispenza says, if you can explain things to a kindergartner, then you understand it really well. But there's got to be a version of
But
like Beethoven.
you're not going to explain the Schrodinger's wave function equation to a kindergartner. Most adults don't
No,
understand it.
but if you were to explain that everything is energy and in waves until you observe it and then it collapses, there's got to be a way to translate that into kindergarten. Like that kindergarten this, honestly, if you somehow explain to children before they're 7 all this stuff in a way that makes sense that they can incorporate it like at whatever level and keep infusing it into what's the word I'm looking for? Like just the education system, there's a word, but my brain still feels like there's a cotton ball in it. I'll feel better next week. I'll feel better later. Every day I feel a little better. Just keep programming it.
There's another guy I watch. I forget how to pronounce his last name. It's like Kurt Jermagile. His podcast is called Theories of Everything.
Mm.
He's Canadian. He just does it from his kitchen, but he's a physicist. So he brings on physicists, but he also brings on people studying consciousness, and he's sort of looking, it's in the title of the podcast, Theories of Everything. He's looking at a way to sort of get, and he's non-judgmental. He does ask really intelligent questions. He doesn't judge, and he's just sort of bringing these people on to sort of see if there's some sort of synthesis for all these ideas that can come to a theory of everything. You know, not just in the classic physics sense of
Right. With the equations or whatever. It's just an
Yeah.
all-encompassing theory that includes
Right.
the equations
Right.
as well as
Right.
the lay terms and civilian understanding.
Well, it's about, you know, in physics, theory of everything is uniting general relativity with quantum field theory, which requires a quantum theory of gravity, which has been elusive. But his approach is a theory of everything that starts at the fundamental level of the universe and details how it emerges to the point where here we are as conscious beings. That's his idea of a theory of everything. And he has guests who are filling in pieces of that, sometimes contradictory pieces because there are different ways to approach it. But it's a great podcast. It's really detailed and intelligent, and he will occasionally, if something gets too technical, will explain it in layman's terms for the audience.
Which is helpful for people like me who, you know, I thought I was.
Well, all of us who don't have a physics degree, you know, some of the stuff is really esoteric.
The more esoteric, the more pretzel brain, the better. I like it.
No, I do too. That's why I watch these things, even though occasionally I go, "Oh, my brain hurts." I don't know what they were talking about.
And that's when it's time, like your buddy Shane said, to go watch Cameron Diaz. What movie did he say he watched? He's like, I had to go watch the movie with some movie with Cameron Diaz just to stop thinking.
A palate cleanser, as I call it.
Exactly. It's like sniffing the coffee beans when you're so busy smelling all the perfumes that it just smells like one big gardenia. It's not what we're doing either. So this theory of everything, I mean, would you say that it goes back to it's all directly connected to consciousness being the 0 point, like of
Well, that's the big question, right? I'm not qualified to answer. Did consciousness create the universe, or did universe create consciousness? I don't
that's
know.
probably a bad question. Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? That's a shitty question. Like, it doesn't
I
give
don't think
really
so.
any good options.
Well, I think it does. I
Does
think
it?
it's, yeah. And it relates to other questions, right? It relates to the fine-tuning argument. Why is it that our universe has all the variables are exactly where they need to be to create life? It's kind of weird, right? It's a hell of a coincidence if that's the case. Now, if there are an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of variables, okay, then we're just one of those. But, or the anthropomorphic argument is that the universe was created specifically to create life. And if you take that argument, that means there was a creator. Something went through all the variables, fine-tuned them, boom, quantum fluctuation, big bang, there's the universe. It's all set up. It set it all in motion. So that's what I mean about the question of, did consciousness create the universe, or did the universe just happen by some method we don't understand, and the result is consciousness? I'm not qualified to answer that. I don't know, and I don't have an opinion of which one it is. It's one of the
Not
two.
scientifically, but then I guess if you close your eyes, right, and then go into the nothing and the nowhere and drop the I'm Stephen David Brooks, you know, and I make films and my mom was from, you know, Antwerp and whatever, like you just become an awareness, and then what? Isn't that our answer? So how are we not qualified to answer it if we are it? Like maybe the answer is the fact that we exist at all. And so
Maybe. Yes. Yeah, maybe the concept of motivation and why is just a human concept that the universe doesn't care about.
Oh, I don't think it cares about why. I think it cares about frequency. What cares, maybe even a wrong attribution. Maybe it's like a
Right.
lot of people say, maybe it's completely neutral and just keeps churning itself out in as many different fractals as it can just for sport to know itself. You know, it's quite the enigma. Do you think that when you take your last breath and leave your body, all the answers happen?
Um, I don't know. I'll ask John Ferreter when I see him. He'll have all the answers.
Next, yeah, watch you walk outside and find a feather.
I still haven't explained how my computer booted up by itself. You know this story. Did I ever tell you this?
You did,
After,
but please tell me again
yes, it's after
for our
this is
audience.
for the audience. We had this mutual friend, John Ferreter, who passed away in 2017, 2018. Yeah. And
Maybe it was 2019. Did he croak while I was here?
no, I think it was, yes, maybe it was, anyway,
2019. And I think
it
it
may
was
have been,
June, May or June.
it may have been, yeah, it may have been. Oh, it was definitely because I was in England in 2019 for Rain Dance, and I walked out of this little the house where I was staying, going to the train station, and there was a line of feathers all along the path to the train station. Yes. Anyway, this was the most mysterious thing, is that I have a desktop editing computer that I keep, it's off, powered off. So I woke up one morning and it had been powered on. The Windows desktop password had been entered because it was open to a browser screen using a browser I don't use. I use Firefox, so it was like Edge. And it was the search results for Vin Diesel. Now, even if I was sleepwalking, I would not have been Googling Vin Diesel.
Come on, you know you got the hots for Vin.
So the only thing I can conclude is he's exactly the kind of casting choice John would suggest, inappropriate casting choice for something I'm working on. That was John going, no, check it out, check it out. It's still a mystery how the button was pushed, the password was entered, the search was generated.
You know, I feel like he really felt like he wasn't done and was desperately trying to continue kibitzing. You know, he wasn't done. I mean, but his body was, so.
Well, the feathers, I still get the feathers. There's the other thing for the audience is a psychic friend said, you're going to be getting feathers from John. And I thought, yeah, sure. And next thing you know, they're all over the place, including this when I went to England. It was a line of feathers from the cottage all the way to the tube station. None to the right, none to the left. Literally as if someone had placed a line of feathers directly to the tube station.
Like
It was
Hansel and
crazy.
Gretel and breadcrumbs, but feathers.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, had
And I
Hansel and Gretel just
and I
used feathers, they wouldn't have gotten in trouble. They'd have found their way home.
and I ran into
Asses.
Gemma Collins, who was this sort of public personality in the UK who John introduced me to. We put her in a music video. And I'm walking down the street in Soho. I turn right, and there she is, right there. That was the same day as the feathers.
Yeah,
And she
see,
just,
that people say, "Oh, it's a coincidence," but I believe less and
no,
less in coincidences every
there are no
day.
coincidences. There are no coincidences. The motive behind the encounter may be mysterious, and we may never find out what it is, but there are no coincidences. When something like that happens, I think to myself, all right, there's something to be learned here. What is it? There's a point being made.
People whose minds are more open tend to uh do that, you know.
I had to learn to do it. I wasn't always like this. I had to really learn how to do it.
You know, Brixie and I have something in common. When I first moved out to LA, my agent was a fella named Paul Kohner. And it's the people with whom my mom worked through another agent named Robbie Lance. These are all these guys are all gone, but they were so classy. just the era of such classy agents, you know, and I had such good fortune to have crossed paths with them. And I'm not saying there aren't classy agents left, but it's become more about the deal and the product placement and the
And
packaging, and it's
and there's
just
also no time,
soulless.
right? There's also no time to nurture talent. They would, I worked for Robbie, and he would take someone. I remember when he took Lenny Von Dolan, and
Oh,
who passed away. I remember. It's funny. Lenny, um, he was nurtured by Robbie, and
Lenny was such a good actor too.
I
Robbie
I
grabbed me by the chin and said, "Oh, she's Juliet," if ever I saw one when I was like 12 and 13 years old. He used to come to the dubbing studio because he handled Lee Volman and all those people.
Mm,
Like, and when my mom would have them here, the whole
right.
Swedish contingent, he would show up, you know. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
Yes, no, so my friend Paul Chart made a short called Nasty in 2017, 2018, something on there. And Lenny was in it. And I said to Lenny, I go, Lenny, last time I saw you, you handed me a stack of 8x10 sitting in Marion Rosenberg's reception area at the Lance office. And he looks at me and goes, oh my God. He remembered me. I was just the PA, an office PA, right? He was a
Yeah.
sweet guy, Lenny. He was great.
Who's that behind you? Is that Betty?
Oh, that's Benny. You bet.
Uh-huh. You want to tell
Miss
your Betty
Davis.
Davis story? Because that's one of the clients. One of the clients, the Paul Kohner clients was Betty
Yeah,
Davis. What a
sure.
class act.
Yeah, so when I worked for Robbie Lance, I was just the lowly driver PA, and I would deliver scripts to clients and got to meet. I mean, and when clients would come to town, I would drive them around town to meetings. I mean, I met and had in my cheap Volkswagen Rabbit Jeremy Irons, Peter Schaffer, the great playwright, Rutger Hauer, Joanna Pakula, a lot of cool people.
My God, Joanna Pakula,
And
she dated Hawk Koch like
yes,
forever.
yeah, that's when she
I
was
know
going out with
Hawk.
him at the time. And I actually taught her to drive because she didn't know how to drive. So, but anyway,
Gorky
um,
Park.
one of
That's,
the, yes,
yeah.
that was Robbie got her that part. So
Yep.
anyway, when Miss Davis was on the West Coast staying at her, I think it's called the Colonial House on Havenhurst off of Sunset. Um, I would deliver scripts, and her assistant Catherine would come to the door, and I'd give the script, and that would be it. And one day I showed up at like 3 minutes after 5, and the door opened, and it was Betty Davis. And she was wearing, I still remember she was like 4 feet tall. No, she was like 5'1", tiny, bright blue eyes, right? Most people don't realize, they've heard the song Betty Davis Eyes, but she did so many black and white movies, most people don't realize those. And I have never to this day met a more powerful human being in my life. She exuded power. It was wild. Anyway, and she was wearing a Dodgers jersey and a Dodgers baseball cap kind of crooked to the side like that, right? It was hysterical. She had a drink and a cigarette. And she just looked at me and goes, well, I'm like, I've never met a famous person before. And I'm like, Miss Davis, I have a script from Mr. Lance. I showed her the little brown square logo on the
Mhm.
label. And she goes, oh, okay. She took the script. It was just a moment. She disappears into her apartment, comes out like this, to hand me a handful of change to tip me. You go, Miss Davis, you don't have to tip me. I work for Mr. Lance. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to insult you. I said, you didn't insult me. And she said, do you want to come in for a drink? I said, it's 5 o'clock. I work till 7. She goes, leave that to me. She turns around, heads inside. So I follow her inside. She shows me into the parlor where she had a couple Oscars on the shelf and framed photos of, her friends, Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and, people like that, right? And I hear her in the other room pick up the phone. And all she said was, yes, it's me. Stephen will not be coming back to the office today. He's having a drink. Thank you. And she hung up. And
Yeah,
she,
man.
she fixed me a drink, which I was like 18 years old, 19 years old. I didn't drink, and certainly not hard liquor. So I kind of sipped it. She had several and she smoked them. Anyway, we had a lovely conversation, and from that point on, the rule was if I was to deliver a script, it would be after 5 p.m. so I could stay for drinks because 5 p.m. was cocktail time. That's why the assistant was gone and she was there. So we did that, and she would just ask me about, you know, my ambitions and movie business. And she said, "Yeah, so you want to be an agent?" I said, "No, I want to be a director." She goes, "Well, why are you working for an agency? You have to quit." And the next day I went into the office and gave my notice because you don't say no to Betty Davis. And she was also right. She was right. Absolutely. I don't know what I was doing there. I value the experience, but I was not going to become a director, a writer based on working at an agency. So I gave my notice, and literally a half hour later, I hear the phone call. The assistant say to Marion Rosenberg, "Miss Davis on line 2." And that was Miss Davis calling to say, "I hear Steven's quitting. He has to come by the Friday night of his last day of work. I want to say goodbye to him." What's funny is I didn't say to her, "Yeah, I'm going to quit tomorrow." She just knew I wouldn't defy her, right? She just knew. If she said, "You must quit," she knew I was going to do it. It's the power. So the last Friday of working at the Lance office, I show up. She dresses in this green taffeta dress. She had makeup on, earrings, and so on. And she sat me down, and we just had a drink, and well, she drank. And she always told me stories, right? So I said, "Do you have any advice for someone just starting out in the movie business?" And she thought about it, and she said, "It's okay to be difficult." And then she rolled her eyes and goes, "Well, you don't have to be as difficult as I was." And she told me stories of how she used to terrify Jack Warner. And then she said, "Don't let them underpay you. If they pay you a lot of money, they'll think you're worth it," which I thought was genius. I still don't remember what the third thing is, and I have this feeling it's going to come to me when I need to hear it. And then she gave me 2 gifts. She gave me that photo, that framed autograph photo, sitting behind me. She's always looking over my shoulder. And she gave me this ashtray, her ashtray, which she said, "Oh, that's weird. Look at that." I hold the ashtray up, and all of a sudden, Miss Davis's face lights up. Do you see that?
I do.
That
That's
is
fucking nuts.
wow.
Hi, Betty.
Look, it doesn't do it anywhere else. It only does it to her. Wow. That's crazy.
That's
Okay.
that's very strange. Like, but I'm glad it's happening on my show. Betty
Yeah,
Davis comes to
yeah.
life.
Yeah. So
So what
anyway,
was her advice? I think I
so
remember
no,
what she told you,
no.
but go
Well,
ahead.
so anyway, so the ashtray, anyway, she goes, "Fellini gave this to me in Cannes in 56, and I want you to have it from one director to another." So whenever I watch 8.5, I think that dude gave her this ashtray. That's the story.
What's on the ashtray?
Um, Birds,
What kind of
chickens,
birds? And what
chickens.
did she tell you not to be?
Don't be a chicken. Did she say that? Maybe she
I
did.
think that was the third thing, honey. Like, don't be a chicken. She told you not to be a chicken,
That
and
could, that
I
that
don't.
could be. That
You
could
don't
be.
have feathers, and you haven't laid any eggs so far. Although Appleseed hasn't come out yet, so who
Yeah,
knows?
that might be. Look at that. That's so crazy how it just lights
No,
her
I
up.
like that. I could spend the next hour just having you do that, going back
Wow,
and
that's
forth from.
wild. That is
You'll have to do
wild.
that one more time before we end, like maybe at
Yeah,
the end.
yeah. After you hit stop record, I want to capture a screenshot of that. That's wild.
The only thing I can tell you about when I met Betty Davis, it was while I was staying at the Century Plaza Hotel and we were going down to the lobby to something. And I hear the other actor uh say, "Miss Davis, you look stunning." So I kind of turned around because I didn't know I was doing, I don't know what I was doing. We didn't have cell phones. I was young, but I wasn't paying attention clearly. And so he says, "Miss Davis, you look stunning." And again, I turn around and there she was in a beautiful gown, silver sequins, and those eyes, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
those are
you know who's got Betty Davis eyes, man? Ross Coulthard. He does. He's got those
yeah.
eyes. He's got those blue peepers right there.
Yeah.
Maybe not exactly like Betty, but as forceful. I would venture a guess that being in a room with that guy, you would feel his vibes clearly. And when he left a room, it would empty, like a palpable presence, pretty sure. But that's just a guess. And he doesn't have boobs. Sorry. Betty did. Okay. Well, all right, Betty Davis. We like that. Um, what's the other movie that came to you in your dream? Zzz.
It was Flytrap.
It was Flytrap?
Yeah.
Okay.
The bigger budget version.
Okay. And there was no other one? That was just the one?
It was Heads and Tails, the director, which I have yet to make, and Flytrap.
But we got to get those other two made. Or is it just one that hasn't been
The
made?
one.
Just the one.
The director.
The director.
That's the
That's the one that's waiting for the right
that's the one.
the
Yeah.
right people
Yep.
to jump in and make it happen. I
Yep.
like it. Yeah. Wow. So I don't know. Is there anything? Do you have any questions for me?
No, I know all the answers.
See, it's back to that psychic thing again. Well,
No, I already know you. That's how I know the answers.
yeah, okay, fine. How many fingers am I holding up under the table?
I have no idea.
Just saying
Two.
them. Yeah,
Two.
it was
No?
two.
No?
Yeah. It wasn't one. I know, you can't take me anywhere, not even in my own show. That's okay. I own it. I can do what I want. Strike. Hmm. What is your favorite? I don't know if it's a directing experience, but I guess you've done so many things in the business. Like I know you've worked with Toby Hooper, you've worked with so many people. Like what's your favorite so far?
My defining experience actually was with Toby Hooper. I
Interesting.
was Toby, director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, hired me to be the visual effects supervisor on Spontaneous Combustion. John Dykstra recommended me for the job. And I was totally unprepared. I'd only been in visual effects. 3 years earlier, I was a driver at Apogee, and I sort of failed upward to visual effects supervisor. And during the making of Spontaneous Combustion, because I was the second unit director, which normally is the boring stuff, shot of a car driving by, insert of a watch, that kind of thing. And because we were chronically behind schedule, Toby had me direct actual first unit scenes with the principal actors. So the first scene I had to direct with professional actors, I had directed student actors, but with professional actors was a scene with Brad Dourif and Melinda Dillon, two Oscar nominees. Brad for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Melinda for Close Encounters. We were talking about Close Encounters. So in this scene, Brad is in a hospital room recovering from burns, spontaneous combustion, and she's this sort of angel who comes back to life. I forget exactly what the scene was. She did something to his parents, but she comes back and haunts him in the hotel room. So I'm shooting her side of the scene first because it's a visual effect. So I'm shooting her separately. And she's supposed to be this specter that comes back to haunt him. And we do one take, and it's terrible. And I walk up to her, and the camera was about 10 feet from her, and I'm standing next to the camera directing her. And I go up to her and I said something. I forget what the suggestion was. And I go back to the camera, roll, action, and it's terrible again. I'm going back for take 3. I'm walking toward her. The world slows down. It becomes a slow motion shot. Heading toward her, and I see she's looking at me. She's desperate for help, desperate for a suggestion that'll help her find the character. And I'm thinking, if I can't get a performance out of Melinda Dillon, I have no business being a film director. I have no possibility. And I walked up to her, and as has happened to me many times since, in that instant, something clicked, and I go, "You're the Wicked Witch of the West." Her eyes lit up, and I thought, "Oh my God, she's got it." I raced back to the camera. We roll, action. She nailed it, perfect. And I thought to myself, "Okay, I can do this." That was the defining moment.
Literally a moment, because an idea, an epiphany, it just pops in. Like,
Yeah. And it always, I no longer stress when I'm shooting. If I don't have an answer, I just know the answer is going to come to me just when I need it. That's why I think the third thing that Miss Davis said to me, whether it's not being a chicken or not, I don't know, but that third thing is just going to pop. I'm going to hear her voice. It's just going to come to me when I need it.
it's funny how you started talking and waving your hand around, and she started lighting up while you're
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
that's what it is. I think it's the reflection of the sunlight coming in,
Oh,
bouncing off the back of your hand onto her face.
except that why does it only hit her face and not the wall?
Because it's her face. It's supposed to be lit. Don't you know that? She's
She's
Betty
ready for her
Davis.
close-up, Mr.
Light her.
Zeno.
She's ready for her close. She ain't no Norma Desmond, man.
I know.
My God. Wow. Well, okay. On a straight note, how's it going with the fires and stuff? Are you guys surviving over there? Are
Yeah,
you okay?
I'm in the middle of the two fires, so we didn't get hit. Did see flames over the hill when it was creeping up the hill toward Encino. But so far everything's fine here. I mean, I know a lot of people who lost everything. It's
Yeah.
really horrific. And there's
Yeah.
this illusion, I mean, this false sense that, well, those people in the Palisades and Altadena, they're just all rich people, so they'll be fine. When in fact, a lot of those houses were just inherited. They weren't wealthy. They weren't purchased by wealthy people. They were purchased by working class people 50, 60, 70 years ago, before real estate went insane. And, these people inherited these houses and were living in them and don't have the resources to rebuild. Insurance is not going to cover it. And Altadena has a lot of people living there, been living there for generations. Those are generational houses. It's not just
Right.
someone.
And the generations who are living in it with inflation and the way things are going can barely afford to live
Right,
in the house that their
right,
great grandfather, whatever. I
right,
mean, I saw
exactly.
that happen in Venice, people who literally got squeezed out of their own
Mm,
family neighborhood
right.
because the McMansions came and
Well, that's what's going to happen, right? The big funds are going to buy up people who are desperate because the insurance companies are drawing out the process. And yes, it's going to be McMansions.
soulless.
They pop up around here, McMansions. I see houses, beautiful old houses from the 40s, that are just torn down, and these big white monstrosities, shoeboxes go up.
Hey man, remember when you helped us move into that house? Then we were invited to leave that house because it was being sold. Then they tore it down, and that's a McMansion now, that place.
Oh, that one
Palms?
in, oh yeah, I do
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
Hmm.
I think you cut yourself. Sorry.
Oh, I did. Didn't I break a glass table? That
Something.
was,
It was a
yeah,
tabletop and then yeah,
yeah,
something. I'm
yeah,
sorry. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Well, I'm sorry about the tabletop.
Oh, I don't care about the tabletop. It'll be replaced. Oh man. Wow. Um, have you, besides feathers, have you gotten any messages from Farrader? Because I hear him in my head every once in a
Hmm.
while. It's not as often as it used to be, but I'll hear him telling me, focus.
I've never heard him speak during.
I hear
I've
the
just,
word focus, and it's always
huh,
with his voice and his
huh,
vibe when I'm a
huh,
little all
yeah,
over the place.
yeah. That
That
sounds
kind
like
of
him.
makes sense. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Well, we've been at it for about an hour. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss? You know,
No,
is there anything you'd like to promote? Is there anything,
no, I'll come back when Appleseed to be promoted. I'll come back and we'll do another when I can reveal more.
right? When you can disclose.
That's right. Disclosure. Appleseed disclosure is coming.
Appleseed disclosure is a real thing, guys. It is. It is. All right. It's always
Hey,
fun to hang out with you.
yes, it was fun.
I appreciate our conversations and our friendship.
Yes. Yep, me too.
And thanks
Thanks
for
for having
introducing
me.
me to Shane. I'll have to interview him next,
He's a
right?
cool dude. Yep, Shane's a cool
Yeah.
dude.
Shane from
He
Bucyrus.
actually wore this. This is actually this cap is the Ambrose Construction Company is from Appleseed, and I can't say anything about Shane's character, but he wore one just like this.
Wow. Was that, you know how they used to make jackets for crew gifts? Is
Yeah.
that,
Well,
did you
this was
make those
just
up?
there were two of these made for the two characters. The one Shane played and another guy, construction guys. And I just liked the logo, so I had the costumer make a couple more for me and one for the producer as a souvenir.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, one of these days I'll have to make a Riding the Frequency swag and offer it to my victims. I have an idea. We do an erudite show and we leave an Easter egg for the dumb folks and have a cage match at the end. What do you think?
Like, have you body slam Richard Doty? That kind of thing?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe he should body slam me, but then, it might be
Well,
hashtag me
Luis
too.
Elizondo could probably body slam you.
Luis Elizondo could probably just do that and I would go across the room. Have you seen how
He's a big guy. Once he
Luis is?
seems it.
Do you think he's for real? Or do you think
Um,
he's a plant?
no,
Think he's a plant? You think Greer is right about him?
I think he's, yeah. Well, you're recording this, but you're not going to broadcast it, right? This is just between us.
Oh my God, you're killing me, Brooksy. Thanks for joining us on Riding the Frequency. Well, that was fun. Hope you guys enjoyed the chat with my buddy Brooksy. You never know. Show about cage matches with Richard Doty. Might actually fly. Dumb shows for dummies. No, that's not what we're doing. Really, it's not. All right. Guys, keep riding the frequency. And remember, you're the awareness.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you one? You one?
Frequency, frequency, frequency. I'm Liane. I'm Liane. I'm Liane. Are you ready to ride the frequency? Are you ready to ride the frequency?